Around 600 BC, a teenager was dragged out of Jerusalem in chains. His city had just been burned. His king had been captured. His entire world had collapsed in a single military campaign, led by the most powerful ruler on earth, Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. This teenager was brought to the capital of the greatest empire of the ancient world, forced to learn a new language, given a new name, and placed inside a royal court that worshipped gods he did not believe in. His name was Daniel. And inside that court, inside that empire, inside that captivity, he was given visions that described the next 2,500 years of human civilization with a precision that historians still struggle to explain. This is not a story about a religious man. This is a forensic examination of a document that named 4 world empires before 3 of them existed, described the exact character of political systems that would not emerge for centuries, and then described a final global condition that looks remarkably like the world you woke up in this morning. Let us start with what Daniel was actually shown, because most people get a vague summary and miss the specific details that make this extraordinary. In chapter 2, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that disturbs him so deeply he cannot sleep. He calls in his entire staff of advisors, magicians, and astrologers. Then he does something unusual. He refuses to tell them the dream. He wants them to tell him what he dreamed and then interpret it. His logic is cold and calculated. Any advisor can invent an interpretation, but only someone with genuine access to divine knowledge could reconstruct the dream itself. Every advisor in the room fails. Daniel is brought in. Daniel tells the king that he saw a massive statue of a man, towering, terrifying in its scale. The head was made of pure gold. The chest and arms were silver. The belly and thighs were bronze. The legs were iron. And the feet, the base of the entire structure, were a mixture of iron and clay. Then a stone, not cut by human hands, strikes the statue at its feet. The whole structure collapses. The iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold, all of it crumbles simultaneously into dust, and the stone grows until it fills the entire earth. Daniel then gives Nebuchadnezzar the interpretation, and what he says next is either one of the most astonishing examples of predictive accuracy in recorded history, or it is the most extraordinary coincidence in the history of literature. He tells the king, "You are the head of gold. Your Babylonian empire is the first kingdom." Historically, Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar ruled from 605 BC to 539 BC. It was the unquestioned superpower of the ancient world. Its capital city contained the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Its walls were reportedly so wide that chariots could race along the top of them. Gold was the defining metal of Babylonian wealth and culture. Then Daniel says, "After you, a second kingdom will arise, inferior to yours, represented by silver." In 539 BC, exactly as stated, Babylon fell. It was conquered overnight by a coalition of Medes and Persians under Cyrus the Great. The Medo-Persian Empire became the dominant power of the known world for the next 2 centuries. It was larger than Babylon. It was administratively more sophisticated, but it lacked the concentrated singular glory of Nebuchadnezzar's personal empire. Silver, not gold. Significant, but one step down. Then a third kingdom, bronze, would rule over the whole earth. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great, a 25-year-old Macedonian king, destroyed the Persian Empire in a military campaign so fast it defied military logic. He conquered a territory stretching from Greece to the borders of modern India in less than a decade. Bronze was the metal of Greek culture, weaponry, and commerce. Alexander's armies moved with a speed and precision the world had never seen. The leopard in Daniel's parallel vision in chapter 7 had 4 wings because the Greek conquest was almost supernaturally vast. When Alexander died at 32 years old in Babylon in 323 BC, his empire was divided among his 4 generals, exactly as Daniel chapter 8 had described when it said the single large horn would break and 4 horns would grow in its place. Then Daniel describes a fourth kingdom, iron, stronger than all the others, crushing and breaking everything before it. Rome rose to Mediterranean dominance in the 2nd century BC. By the time of Jesus, Rome controlled Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It was the first empire to systematically build roads connecting its entire territory. At its peak, the Roman Empire contained an estimated 70 million people, roughly 20 to 30% of the world's entire population at the time. Iron was not just Roman symbolism. Iron was Roman technology. Rome's military advantage was built on iron discipline, iron weapons, and iron infrastructure. Roman soldiers carried weapons and armor made of iron alloys that were technologically superior to anything their enemies possessed. The Babylonian Empire was real. The Persian Empire was real. The Greek Empire was real. The Roman Empire was real. And they appeared in exactly the sequence Daniel described while standing in the court of the first one. Now here is where the text stops being historical and starts being current. After the iron legs, Daniel describes the feet and the 10 toes. Iron mixed with clay, partly strong, partly brittle, a divided kingdom. A mixture of peoples who try to unite, who attempt to hold together through political alliance and intermarriage, but who cannot ultimately fuse because iron and clay are fundamentally incompatible substances. Daniel 2:43 says specifically, "They will mix with one another in a marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay." Rome did not simply fall, it fragmented. The Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, under pressure from Germanic tribes. The Eastern Roman Empire, Constantinople, held on until 1453 AD. What emerged from the rubble of Rome was not a single successor empire, but a collection of European nation-states, each one carrying Roman legal tradition, Roman language roots, Roman Christian religious infrastructure, but each fiercely, stubbornly separate. Charlemagne tried to reunite them in 800 AD. He failed to make it permanent. Charles V of the Habsburg dynasty controlled more European territory than any ruler since Rome in the 1500s. He abdicated in exhaustion in 1556 and split his empire between two successors. Napoleon conquered most of continental Europe between 1804 and 1812. Russia stopped him. Adolf Hitler built a military alliance that by 1941 controlled territory from the Atlantic coast to the outskirts of Moscow. He was defeated by a coalition of powers within 4 years. Every attempt to reconstruct the Roman Empire into a single unified entity has collapsed. Not because the military power was insufficient, because the underlying cultural, political, and national identities of European peoples refused to dissolve into one another. Iron does not mix with clay, the text said. This 2,500 years ago, every ruler who tried to prove it wrong ended up confirming it instead. The European Union is the most ambitious peacetime attempt to unify the former Roman territories in history. 27 nations, a common currency used by 19 of them, a common parliament, a common court, a common market of 447 million people, with a combined GDP of approximately $18 trillion as of 2024. And yet, it is visibly, structurally struggling to hold itself together. Brexit happened in 2020. The United Kingdom, one of its most economically significant members, voted to leave and spent years in bitter negotiation over how to do so. The Greek debt crisis of 2010 to 2018 nearly shattered the euro. Germany and Greece sat in the same economic union but with fundamentally incompatible economic models. Industrial iron and agricultural clay in the same structure, not mixing, creating fractures. Viktor Orban's Hungary and the European Commission are in sustained institutional conflict over democratic norms. Poland has been in repeated legal conflict with Brussels over judicial independence. Marine Le Pen's political movement in France, Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, and nationalist parties across Italy, Sweden, Finland, and the Netherlands are all pulling against the logic of centralized European unity. Daniel 2:43. They will mix with one another, but they will not hold together. Now let us go to Daniel chapter 7, because this is where the description becomes even more specific and even more difficult to dismiss. In chapter 7, Daniel sees the same four empires again, but this time God shows him what they look like from heaven's perspective, not an impressive statue of a man. Four wild beasts rising from the sea. The first is a lion with eagle's wings, Babylon. Majestic but ultimately humbled, the wings plucked, the beast made to stand like a man. The second is a bear, raised up on one side, with 3 ribs in its mouth, Medo Persia. Powerful but lumbering. The 3 ribs represent the 3 major kingdoms it consumed, Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt. The third is a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, Greece under Alexander. The 4 wings represent impossible speed. The 4 heads represent the 4 generals, Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, and Ptolemy, among whom the empire was divided after Alexander's death. The 4th beast has no animal name. Daniel cannot find a comparison in the natural world. It has iron teeth, bronze claws, and 10 horns. It is described as different from all the others, more terrifying, more consuming, Rome, and whatever Rome becomes in its final form. Here's the detail that connects directly to the present moment. Among the 10 horns on the 4th beast, a smaller horn rises up. It uproots 3 of the existing horns. It has eyes like human eyes. It has a mouth speaking arrogant words, and it wages war against the people of God, for what the text calls a time, times, and half a time. This figure is described in Daniel chapter 9 as well, and the New Testament book of Revelation builds on this imagery extensively. Whatever your theological position on prophecy, the structural description Daniel gives is specific enough to be remarkable. A leader who rises within a fragmented system, descended from Rome, who consolidates power at the expense of others within that system, who speaks with extraordinary arrogance, who attempts to change times and laws, who demands a form of global allegiance. In 2024 alone, global democratic backsliding was documented in 62 countries according to Freedom House's annual report. Strongman political movements are the dominant electoral force across Europe, Latin America, and Asia simultaneously. The World Economic Forum's 2024 Global Risks Report listed democratic erosion as one of the top 3 global threats for the coming decade. International institutions built after World War II, the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, NATO, the World Trade Organization, are under the most sustained pressure they have faced since their founding. Daniel described a world where the last dominant global system is simultaneously powerful and fragile, unified in structure, but fractured in reality, producing concentrated leadership figures who demand total allegiance and ultimately unable to sustain itself. Then there is the stone, Daniel 2:34. A stone was cut out, not by human hands. It struck the statue at its feet, and the whole structure collapsed simultaneously. The gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, the clay, everything that had been built by human civilizations across 25 centuries, all of it destroyed together, not gradually, not in sequence, all at once, and the stone grew until it became a mountain that filled the whole earth. Daniel identifies this as the kingdom of God, not a human political system, not a reformed version of any existing empire. Something categorically different, initiated by something outside the human political process entirely. Daniel 2:44. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, not after the empires conclude naturally, not after the last empire fades, while those kings are still present. During the period of the iron and clay feet, what makes Daniel's vision historically remarkable is not that he got the general arc of history approximately right. What makes it remarkable is the specific details. 4 empires in sequence, the correct order, the correct relative strengths, the correct character of each, from gold's singular glory to iron's crushing institutional power, the fragmentation that follows Rome, the specific description of a mixed system that appears unified but cannot genuinely hold together, the specific description of concentrated leadership rising within that fragmented system. A man standing in Babylon in 600 BC described the Roman Empire, the fragmentation of Europe, the rise and fall of unification projects, and the character of global politics in the 21st century. The text did not hide any of this. It has been sitting in the same place for 2,500 years. The only question it leaves unanswered is what comes after the feat, and according to Daniel, that answer is not political. It never was.